Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. This video is going to become a favorite for many of you, I'm sure, because I'm going to show you a totally impressive opening, which is the Spanish opening, with some absolutely terrifying lines, full of traps, and, above all, they're traps where if your opponent doesn't fall for them, it's no big deal, because we're going to be just fine anyway. The thing is, there will be so many traps that they're bound to fall into one of them. First of all, chess teacher, what is the Spanish opening? Because if I don't even know what the Spanish opening is, how am I going to follow along? The Spanish opening occurs after e4, e5, the double king's pawn, knight f3, and knight c6. Look, the most normal thing in the world, and here we play bishop b5. This, friends, is the Spanish opening. Well, here we're going to start with the most logical option for black, which is the Berlin defense. There are many options, but right now the most fashionable one is knight f6. Don't worry, we're going to cover many lines. Here there are two main moves, d3 and castling, and we're going to recommend castling in this video. Okay, and you'll see why. With castling, we're already giving away a pawn, huh? Right off the bat, as you can see, the e4 pawn is hanging. What does it mean that it's hanging? That nobody is defending it. That's why, if they want to, the black pieces can capture that pawn, which is actually the main line. Here, the main line is to play d4, and we're going to recommend another move. But first, let me mention how the main variation works, or how it goes, because you should at least be familiar with it, right? Since it's the most played and the most studied. But I'm not going to recommend it, and I'll explain why in a moment. d4 here would be the main variation. Notice that taking this pawn would already be a little dangerous for black. See how they're opening the king's file with the knight? And with a simple move like rook e1, we'd already be putting too much pressure on this knight and we'd probably end up winning it, okay? That's why this pawn isn't captured here, but instead the knight retreats to d6. This is the main line, okay? Attacking this bishop here, practically forcing us to capture this knight so we don't lose the center pawn, right? And once this pawn here is captured, it's simply recaptured normally and calmly, and after pawn takes pawn, notice they have to move this knight, we trade queens, and this would be the main line, okay? Notice we're in a little endgame because the queens are gone, and simply what's good and what's bad about it. The good thing is that we have our king safe, and our opponent hasn't castled, and the bad thing is that our opponent has a bishop pair that we don't have. It's a very well studied and very balanced endgame that usually ends in a draw. That's why I won't recommend this line, but instead we're going to move on to a super aggressive line, which is the one you guys like. Let's go. Let's review, because I don't want anyone to get lost. We play the Ruy Lopez, this one here, Berlin defense, we castle, and now for the black pieces, the logical move they have here is to capture this hanging pawn. Okay. Well, we've seen the main line with d4, but I'm going to recommend the move here which is even more logical directly, which is rook e1. We're attacking the knight and also indirectly the pawn on e5. Well, it looks like a very normal position, but it hides many secrets. And if you manage to master this video, you're going to win many more games. So pay attention to this video, okay? Highly, highly, highly recommended. Well, we're attacking the knight and also the pawn. So here we have to see what black usually plays. The most common move here is knight d6. Why? Because they retreat the knight while attacking our bishop, right? Notice that it's the most logical move. If they decide, for example, to play d5, also a very logical move to defend this knight and have everything protected, we could simply capture. Here, notice we have a very good pin with this bishop, and we bring in the knight to put on more pressure. That's why we directly rule out the move d5. The same would happen with f5, for example, where it's true there wouldn't be a pin, we'd simply kick the knight, and when it moves, we could capture the e5 pawn, and the king would be very weakened, okay? So let's calculate what happens with the move that seems best, knight d6, which attacks our bishop. This is where our little traps begin. Obviously, first we'll take this pawn, right? That's why we've placed the rook on e1. Now, don't anyone take with the rook, okay? Don't sacrifice the exchange. Here we take with the knight, all right? And now, notice that if they take here, we could take back directly with the rook, right? That would be the most normal thing, wouldn't it? Look, knight takes, and here the normal thing would be rook takes, giving a check to the king. But wait, be careful, because I brought you this recipe a long time ago on the channel. We're going to go very deep into some lines now, because it's a super aggressive variation, and you're going to win many, many games. Knight c3. Incredible. Here we're already setting up a lot of traps. First, we're down a piece. Okay, we've lost a knight, right? Temporarily, don't worry, we've lost a knight. Well, now we're sacrificing this knight, more or less, because we could recapture it, but our idea isn't to recapture it, but to go to d5. You'll see it now. It's totally impressive. So stay tuned here, because we're setting a trap, but a very safe trap, because if they don't fall for it, we'll just continue as usual, okay? What happens if they capture this bishop? Let's see. We're simply going to follow up with this. Now we're down 2 pieces. We capture this knight with check. Now we're down 1 piece. They have to block. Look at that. The only move is to block. And if you want, you could already take back this knight, huh? And you'd be even on material, but that's not our plan. Instead, our plan is to play knight to d5. Look, knight to d5, a tremendous move. We're putting on incredible pressure. We're attacking this bishop with 2 pieces, only defended by the queen, meaning they'd have to give up material at least, and we're applying brutal pressure. Now, let's see, can black save themselves from all this? Well, the truth is, they have it very tough here. Notice that the logical move is castling. Since they have an extra piece, they sacrifice this other piece, but at least they're castled, right? This would be the most normal thing. But look, after knight takes bishop, check, forced, if they don't want to give up the queen, they have to move. And now, here you'd have at least 2 alternatives to win. One would be the simple one, and the other would be, well, more than simple. Both are simple. But one would be to secure it, and the other would be to finish it off brilliantly, right? The simple one is, okay, right now we're even on pieces, so I trade this knight to free the rook from defense, and when I trade it, I capture an extra piece, and I stay with an extra piece. Easy as can be, and I'm going to win the game if I play more or less normally. The aggressive variation is to play directly with the queen to h5. You'll tell me, hey, chess teacher, but here you have the chance to get a piece advantage and you're not doing it. Yeah, but look, now, no matter how much they try to save this piece advantage, we could even sacrifice the queen to give Anastasia's mate. Do you know what Anastasia's mate is? No? We take here, and since the knight is blocking these 2 exits for the king, we'd simply give checkmate with the rook. Notice that it's the back rank mate. It's the same as if there were 2 pawns here, right? If it were like this, the king can't get out. Simply, the pawns don't need to be there because the knight covers both exits. So here you have 2 options, right? What I just said. You can even capture here and win a piece. You'd have a piece advantage or the aggressive one. All right, don't worry, we're going to keep reviewing it, okay? I want it to be clear to everyone and for you to win lots of games. And you could capture here on the next move. This position, is totally won. So we've seen that knight to c3 sets up some totally impressive traps. Now then, if they take the bishop, we've seen that this was very bad for black, and in all cases they'd end up losing. We have rook takes knight, we just saw it, and then we'd enter with the knight directly through here without taking back this knight. You remember, right? But what happens if they play bishop to e7? A better move. Black has an extra piece, we can recapture this knight, and we'd be exactly even. But notice that black doesn't suffer at all now. But notice that here we give him the chance to fall into the same trap again. If they get too clever now and capture this bishop, we'd be in the same position as before. We wouldn't recapture with the knight or the rook, but instead we'd jump with the knight to d5 again, with the same pressure in the center. You remember, right? We're in exactly the same position. If here, instead of castling, since we've seen what happens, for example, they try to play d6, attacking the rook, we'd simply attack here. Rook takes bishop, we'd give check. Then the king would have to move. The king would stay in the center in a very bad position. We'd be in a very advantageous position, okay? So we'd be much better off here. If after knight c3, black plays bishop e7, as we've seen so far, and when we take, they play castle, then they've played very well, okay? They haven't fallen for our knight c3 trap. Perfect. They played bishop e7 first and then castled. What do we have to do then? Well, it's time to withdraw our bishop, okay? Look at this, If they've managed to do this order, then they've dodged all the traps. It's absolutely fine, because we have an equally privileged position. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to place the bishop on d3 for a very obvious reason that you'll see next. This knight should be here. Look at the whole path it's taken to get here. It should be on f6 because you already know that the knight on f6 is the best defender of the castle because it protects the h7 square, h5, even squares further ahead. The knight now on d6 does absolutely nothing to protect the castle. So we'll have this bishop pointing here, the queen that can enter, the rook that can enter. Notice that in this position they haven't fallen for the traps, but I'm sure all of you would like to play them with the white pieces. So let's take a good look at it. Don't be afraid to repeat the lines in the video. You can see that the more times we repeat them, the more they'll stay in your head, okay? We're here in the Spanish opening Berlin defense, okay? The more times we repeat the lines, the more you'll see how we got there, and the clearer it'll be for you. Otherwise, in your games, you won't know what to do. Here I recommend castling. They have to capture this pawn here because it's the most valuable option for black. We can see many more options. You already know that people have 10,000 options, but we can't cover them all in one video. This is the best one, so let's cover this one for now. Rook 1 to attack the knight and the pawn. And here the best move, as we've seen before, is knight d6 attacking this bishop. That's why we've come this far, okay? Now we're going to capture this pawn here. They're going to capture the knight here, and instead of capturing directly with the knight, we're going to set up, okay? The little trap, well, the trap full of traps, knight c3. There's a very bad move here that I haven't evaluated before, and I'll explain why, because it's super interesting. You have to be quite attentive to realize how we can win with this move, okay? f6. They defend the knight with the pawn. Apparently, it seems like a pretty interesting move, right? They simply defend the pawn. It's true that it weakens my king a bit, but it seems like absolutely nothing happens, right? Well, it's a very dangerous move, and you have to know how to punish it. Remember one thing, we're down a piece, right? Well, now we're going to try to pin this knight. Look, we're not just gonna try, we're gonna do it. We have the rook pinning the knight and the king. You know that when a rook is placed between a piece and the king, that piece is pinned, and we'll likely win it if we can attack it with a pawn. So we attack it with this pawn, and now we're almost certain to win this piece. What happens? Well, now they can take this one here, and they're temporarily up 2 pieces. Why 2 pieces? Because they have 2 knights and 2 bishops, and we have 1 knight and 1 bishop, okay? First, we win back a piece. But here, black will say, well, I'll capture here, attacking the queen, right? And now I have 2 more pieces than you again, and you can only win 1 back, right? I'm sure all of you have thought of this. Well, now what we're going to do is take advantage of the pin and give this discovered check. You have to pay attention. The good thing about YouTube is you can watch this video as many times as needed, okay? I try to go slowly, though many tell me I go too fast. I'm sorry, I don't want the video to last 3.5 hours, so you can re-watch it. I'm very sorry. I'll try to go as slowly as possible, okay? We are giving this discovered check. Well, they can't block with the queen or they'd lose it, nor with the bishop or they'd lose it with drastic consequences, right? So they have to move the king away. Now, if we decided to win back this knight, we would be at a disadvantage, okay? Why? Because if we take here, we're down a piece, 2 bishops for the opponent against 1 bishop for us. So what are we going to do? Sacrifice the queen. Pay attention, okay? Because it's a complicated line, but look, well, complicated. It's not complicated if you know it by heart, but it would be if you hadn't seen this video, right? So we'll capture here, sacrificing the queen, and you'll say, "Just teacher, have you gone mad?" And I'll say, as always, yes, I've gone completely crazy, but this line works and we'll be better off. What happens? If they capture your queen here, we just win it back by taking this rook and placing it in a better position, right? So we end up in a completely winning position here. We attack the knight, we attack this pawn, black is completely lost, right? That's if they capture the queen. Of course, you'll say, if they take the queen, everything's fine. But what if they capture this pawn here and avoid all these problems? Notice they still have 1, 2, and 3 pieces, and I only have 1. A two-piece advantage of which I can only win back 1. And in fact, I can't win it back now, because if I do, look, it attacks both rooks, and that would be a disaster. So, chess teacher, what do I do? Well, taking advantage of having eliminated this pawn here, look, this pawn here, what did we want to do? Queen to h5 check, right? We wanted to go all in, but g6 prevented all these problems. It attacked the queen. They could bring out the knight, so this wouldn't be a good idea. But that's why we traded here first to eliminate this pawn, and now, yes, enter with the queen and I was going to say crap, intermediate move checking the king, right? Check to the king, this king has to move away. Where can he go? Well, he'll probably have to go to either square, this one or this one, okay? Both are equally banned. Let's see them. It doesn't matter. Let's first assume he comes to this square here. The move is the same wherever he goes. We're not going to take back the knight, importantly, but we'll play the little bishop attacking the queen. Why? This queen cannot escape. The rook cuts off all exits, and the bishop blocks the diagonal. Therefore, we have trapped his queen. And many of you will say, hey, chess teacher, you're going crazy, because I can just cover with the bishop. And now this queen has a way out. Well, if you try to cover with the bishop, here you're definitely entering a mating net. First, I give you this check, right? As you can see, this check. And now what's happening? That if you move, I give you mate. See it? Check, and when they capture, we enter with the queen and mate, right? But if they block with the bishop, then they escape the mate. Well, no, here we're going to make a very beautiful move. Notice that this bishop is pinned this way, while now we're going to pin it this way. Look, incredible. This really is incredible. He can't take the queen because we have the king pinned, and he can't take the bishop because we'd enter with queen takes rook check. And not only that, but the king couldn't go protect the queen because the rook is blocking this file. So when he moves, we'll capture his queen. Look what a beautiful position. We've left the king completely exposed. He can't do absolutely anything, and now when he moves, we're simply going to capture his queen, and we'd be left with a totally massive material advantage. Wait, because now comes a good part of the video. You know that when I show you something impressive, I always say, now comes the moment of truth. Eh? Now comes the moment of truth. Look, knight f6, Berlin defense. Let's castle. The repetition's important, eh? Important so that it's clear to you. They capture here, and what do we do? Rook e1. Look at our move, knight d6. And what do? We capture this pawn. We've seen the main line, which was to capture this knight here. First, I don't know if I've told you or not, if they capture this bishop right away, they've lost the game, eh? This must be kept in mind, as many people fall directly into this silly trap. Why? Because after knight takes knight, we have a discovered check with the rook, and we're going to capture the queen no matter what. We're given check. If they block with the bishop, we capture the queen. And if they block with the queen, we capture the queen. So we'd win the queen no matter what. So what should be done? Above all, if they capture this bishop, knight takes knight wins the game. You have to know this, okay? I'm not sure if I'd mentioned it to you. Here, many of you will be thinking, well, if they're pressing this knight, and I don't want trouble, what if I try to defend with everything and move back? This would already be a serious mistake because our pressure would be so strong that there'd be no way to stop it, right? It's true, we're equal in material, but our pieces are much better placed, right? Now, is he attacking this bishop? Yes, but we're not going to move it, honestly. Simply, we're going to play queen f3, threatening checkmate with the knight and the queen. You see it, right? If they capture this free bishop, we simply deliver mate. So this bishop is untouchable. Good. So we have to defend this point. Well, look, I see it coming. Many of you will say, chess teacher, this point is already defended. Yes, correct, but we have to defend this point to be able to capture this bishop. Besides, if you don't defend this point and play, for example, g6 to develop the bishop and castle, I'll just come with bishop c4, aim at you with all my pieces, and now you can really pray, because you can't do anything at all here. Also, if you capture this bishop at some point, you'll fall into mate again. That's why I'm telling you that you have to defend this point. Surely all of you have thought, f6 defends and attacks the knight. A very interesting move. Well, notice that now we've played queen f3, f6, and queen h5. We move the queen again. We're creating weaknesses, right? Now we're attacking the king, and when they play g6, okay, we sacrifice right here. Why can we sacrifice? Because this knight is pinned, it can't take, and this pawn is pinned, because we'd take the rook. So here we'd be attacking the rook, we'd be attacking the bishop, we'd be giving a discovered check. Therefore, the black pieces would have nothing to do here. Hey, chess teacher, you know what happens? I love your lines, but then when I go play myself, they don't play the lines you say, and they make weird moves. Well, for example, in these lines, you have to know how to take advantage if, instead of playing what I tell you, they play a totally random move. For example, if they ignore everything, the thread, and play, for example, queen f6, right? Placing one more piece on the attack, something like that. Notice that we're t-threatening a discovered attack with the knight all the time. In this case, a move as simple as knight takes knight would be winning the game. Again, why? Knight takes knight, discovered check. It's true, we don't win the queen, but now the king can't move, they have to block. If they block with the queen, we capture it, and if they block with the bishop, well, we just capture it again with check. And notice that the position is falling apart. We're up, we have two extra pieces, the king is going to be left without castling. That's why normally when I explain some lines, it's because there are other lines, many others, that you have to know how to punish by playing and finding the way. The thing is that obviously I can't cover all the lines in chess because they are infinite. Hey, chess teacher, shall we make a deal? You teach me one of these secondary lines and how to punish it brutally, and as a reward, as the good subscriber I am, I'll leave you a like and a good comment. I'll even subscribe to the channel because I like your content. Well, come on then, deal! I'm going to show you an impressive line to finish the video, which will surely be your favorite. You're going to see what happens if they try to go out of theory, okay? We castle, and here they capture our pawn. We play rook 1, and notice that we've seen that the good one was to come here. This one was punished, this one was punished, and this is the one we've seen how to punish in the video. What happens if they go somewhere else? Hey, chess teacher, nothing's happening here either, right? We're down a pawn. At most, we can win it back, and that's it. Well, stay tuned, because here I'm going to show you how to really punish it if some smart aleck tries to escape the theory in the video. We'll play d4. This to start with, we attack the knight and we attack the pawn with 3 pieces, right? It doesn't seem serious because we're down a pawn, and at most we'll get the pawn back because they just have to move the knight. Not here, because take, double attack, and they lose a piece, right? The typical fort. So they have to go somewhere else. For example, here, right? Seems like the most logical one, right? Fine. So here, how can we proceed if our opponent has moved the knight correctly? Then we capture right here. This position's a massacre for white. There's no move that can save him. For example, here, there are discovered pins. Our opponent tries to escape, bishop e7, they want to castle fast. So what can we do if our opponent does that? Well, we just come over here and pin absolutely everything. No matter how much they try to give a little poke, this would be even worse because they'd be opening the line for the queen. That's why bishop e7 doesn't work here. Another move would be, what happens if I capture the knight? Let's see, if my problem is the knight and all the discovered attacks, I capture it and nothing happened here. Well, here we recapture it with the rook giving check, and now black can really start praying again. They just can't do anything. Look, they cover with the bishop again, and you'll tell me, chess teacher, but that's it, there's nothing else to do. Well, simply the same thing again. We come with the bishop, pin absolutely everything, attack with 2 pieces. This bishop can no longer be defended. They have to play f6 no matter what. And now what? Do we capture? No. Why? Because if we capture, they can... There, we come here. No, because they can play g6. So what do? First, we sacrifice the bishop, and now, when they capture, we come in with the queen. Notice that this is directly a mating net, right? If they come here because they have to escape, we redirect our bishop. Notice that what we're doing is placing our pieces in a way that they fit together. Notice that it's very easy, huh? No, you don't have to learn all this by heart. Simply, if they go off theory, any move that's halfway reasonable toward the enemy king is going to end up winning it, right? The thing is, we're threatening mate here, and it can only be stopped with d5. We capture it with the rook attacking the queen, and when the queen moves, or does anything else, for example, if the queen comes here, then we'd give mate right away. How could we give mate here? There are several options, right? But the simplest one, queen h6. They have to put themselves in the pin, and when they put themselves in the pin, any move of the queen, of the rook, sorry, would give checkmate. It's a super interesting opening and full of traps. And I don't want the video to go on much longer, but if you're liking it, I have this much content for this opening that we could extend for several more videos. If you enjoyed it, as always, let me know in the comments. Give me a big thumbs up. It's how I know if you like the video or not. Especially if you've made it to the end, I'd really appreciate it. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos like this. See you in the next video, friends. Bye.